Your Excellency, Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations, Saliwok Zwede, Director General of UNON, the Director General of the United Nations Office, Dr. Achim Steiner, the Executive Director of UNEP, Dr. Johan Kloos, Executive Director of UN Habitat, Excellencies, distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't know what the protocol is, but given the fact that I'm not on my territory, but with your permission, Secretary General, I would like to ask this distinguished gathering that includes many African ministers to just stand for a minute silence in remembrance of President Michael Sata of Zambia. I thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed I am delighted to join you today, and let me start by most warmly welcoming our guests to Kenya, and indeed by expressing my hope for a pleasant and indeed most productive conference. We're all gathered at a critical time for Africa and our 2063 agenda for development. This agenda demands our continent to a shared strategic framework for inclusive growth and sustainable development for Africa's transformation. It also presupposes that we will do things differently to achieve our vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. Further, Agenda 2063 clearly identifies infrastructure, transport, and interconnectiveness as key drivers and enablers to our social and economic development. This forum is therefore timely, and it allows us to develop a framework for sustainable transport across the continent. Indeed, it is the first time ministers in charge of both transport and environmental matters will be engaged at a continental level to chart a way forward on the development of structures and systems for sustainable transport in Africa. I hope that this framework, once developed, will find its way into your planning and implementation processes in each and every country. To realize Africa's development aspirations, we need the active engagement of all stakeholders, from governments, international organizations, private sector, academia, research institutions, financial institutions, and civil society at large. Many of these stakeholders are today participating in this conference, proof of our common desire to carry everyone along in our development journey. As you think through a sustainable transport action plan for Africa, it is critical to understand that time is of the essence. Africa is growing quickly. Our people want, and indeed deserve, greater social and economic development. Our plans cannot lag behind our people's aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, to ensure that sustainable action plan is relevant and practical, you must develop it from a bottom-up perspective. If the planning does not consult and engage our citizens, it cannot hope to be embraced and implemented by all. African solutions to African challenges is no mere slogan. The action plan must take into account that our people are keen to integrate and trade. It must address the matters of inter-Africa trade and investment, the need of landlocked countries, and also of regional security. To achieve this, however, our plans must be synchronized. So it is essential for our regional trading blocs on the continent to work closely to prioritize their transport infrastructure plans. For our part, we in East Africa have prioritized the development of key transport corridors in an effort to promote trade and investment within our sub-region. The improvement of the northern and central corridors which connect Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo are clear examples. We are working together to develop seamless transport infrastructure while doing all we can to protect and to preserve our environment. It is my hope that other regional trading blocs will consider a similar approach. We will have to be bold, we will have to be imaginative, and indeed innovative to develop transport systems on our continent that are both efficient and environmentally sound. We must be ready to share best practices and lessons and invest in research, and we must also develop the necessary homegrown expertise on the continent to actually implement our plans. One of our great barriers to sustainable transport is cost. We must therefore consider alternative technologies and locally develop solutions to lower our costs of transport and their operations and maintenance of our infrastructure. In addition, we must develop innovative ways and means to raise the necessary finances to implement our plans. It is therefore important that our plans include the engagement of the private sector, development partners, and other friendly nations to join us in this endeavor. Here in Kenya, for example, we have developed the annuity financing framework for road infrastructure development and maintenance. This program brings together government, financiers, and contractors to fast-track the construction of roads. The program is promising. We expect to nearly double the paved road infrastructure in our country over the next few years. This model clearly shows the critical role the private sector can play in sustainable transport. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this conference on sustainable transport in Africa is a strong statement of Africa's willingness to address the uphill task of integrating economic growth with sound environmental management. Generating economic growth and protecting the environment are not mutually exclusive objectives. Economic growth that undermines our environmental agenda is not only unsustainable, but is not viable, as the short-term benefits are far outweighed by the long-term consequences. Equally, climate change is a reality whose effects we can no longer ignore. Ancient wisdom and modern science make it perfectly clear that we have no choice but to embrace environmentally sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I wish to reiterate that while Africa's transport challenges are complex and the need to find sustainable solutions ever more pressing, we retain the ability to solve them. The chance to make a difference after collective reflection at this conference is precious, and I call upon all of you not to waste it. Let me now close once again by wishing you a very successful conference and hope that you will also take time to visit and see a bit of our country as well as interact with the people of Kenya. I thank you and God bless you all.